Okay, so I did these beeps yesterday, early evening. Um, shall I do the first one?
I think so,
Yes.
yes. Is this day 11? Is that what we...
I think
Yeah,
so.
Okay.
that's what I have.
Beeps from yesterday. I'm ready.
Okay, so the first one went off at 5:05 p.m. And I've written, I was mid-moan in response to some pain, a constant throbbing, tightness in my hands and fingers. I was mid-walk and looking at my phone, but the pain within my hands and fingers was the overwhelming experience, and a negative one at that.
So was this negative pain, this throbbing in your fingers, and so can you describe this pain more?
Yeah. The best word I think is tightness. My hands felt like it was uncomfortable and it was negative and it was constant. Um, I wouldn't. I was gonna maybe use like sharp, but sharp feels like shortness, but tight is the best sort of thing. And the pain that I was experiencing was definitely just in that area, like the rest of my body didn't really hurt or whatever. Um, and it was a level of intensity that meant nothing else really came into my awareness.
Okay. Can you describe the area specifically where you felt this?
I would say there was tightness from honestly wrist and above, so the whole hand, and then like through my like the webbing and my fingers, it felt most intense probably.
You said the webbing,
Yeah,
like
the
so
bits between my fingers.
was so most intense in the fingers and the webbing,
Mm-hmm.
so more than the whole hand.
Yep.
Could you say like how much like could you say like 60%, 40% or something like that, or does that not make
I don't
sense?
think so. I can't really remember because it feels it was like the pain is all there and it feels
Mhm.
more um um yeah, like it would be too hard to separate because it was all sort of one thing, but I definitely felt like, if it was like a heat map, it would be like red, most red there.
Okay. Um, and it's both hands.
hmm
Um, and it's a tightness, a negative tight throbbing. Is it more on the skin or just the whole thing or the muscles or
Oh yeah,
does
good
that not even
question.
make sense to it?
No, good question. It was skin-y. I've had like, I don't know, I don't think my skin agrees with Australia, so I'm having skin problems. But yeah, when I say tightness, it was like a um extremities like skinny tight, not it wasn't so much a muscle pain or anything. It was
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
So the skin feeling
taut.
kind of,
And Julian asked you a little bit ago, and I'd like to follow up a little bit about that. He asked you both hands, and you said yes. And
hmm
I would like to ask the same in both hands, identical in both hands.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
um, so a kind of tight skinny, like a taut, like the skin being kind of stretched kind of thing, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, I feel like that. Like this it almost I mean this is presuming that you also know what I mean when I say this, but sort of the feeling you get of when you've spent way too much time in the sun. So it's your skin feels tight and sort of hot and a bit tingly, but certainly all like a really negative, like not even close to an enjoyable experience. Um,
Hmm.
and then a throbbing with that. And it was, yeah, just that was the constant sensation. It wasn't like coming in waves or a particular sharpness. It just felt like that all the time. So when the beep went off, I was literally mid moan and like, oh, in like pain. Um, associated with that.
Mhm. Uh, let me do look into the throbbing thing before the moan thing.
Mm-hmm.
The throbbing, was that like a blood, like a pulse kind of throbbing, or just some other kind of like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, when I say throb, I sort of mean, yeah, I would say like a bloody, pulsy sort of feeling, almost that feeling of like as if you can feel your heartbeat in your hands. So I would
Okay.
say that.
So as opposed to just the skin, like the pain kind of quickly coming and going, kind of oscillating.
Hmm.
So not that, just more about the,
Yeah, like yeah. So the throb would be far, yeah, not short, sharp sort of thing, like a long, more constant pulse maybe, but that's starting to feel a little bit too defined for what it felt like.
okay, it's too defined. Because I kind of brought up the blood pulse thing. You didn't mention blood or a pulse.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
kind of
but
mean that more metaphorically like a pulse, like it's pulsating, or do you, or more literally, or
um no, I think a little bit of both. I think I'm okay with pulsing because I think that that's just another way to describe the throbbing that I'm saying. So I don't think you're putting words in my mouth there.
okay.
Uh yeah, but the only difference that I would want to make is that throb for me definitely has connotations of like a longer drawn out thing, whereas pulse maybe feels a bit shorter, but it's definitely more of the um, drawn out sort of feeling or sensation.
Could you say what rhythm this kind of thing comes at, or is that impossible?
I don't think I can recall.
Okay.
Yes, Russ.
Russ?
So it seems to me that throb can have sort of two different meanings. One would be oscillatory, and the other would be sort of dull, but not oscillatory.
I don't know what the word oscillatory means.
Oscillatory means coming and going.
Oh,
So you could say it's throbbing, and then you mean it's coming and then going and coming and
hmm,
going and coming and going and coming and going. Or you could say it's throbbing, which is sort of steady, but not sharp and not.
yeah. Well, then maybe, sorry, Julian, it feels a bit different to what I said before. But if I were to pick one of the two there, I say the dull, more steady throb, which doesn't
Okay.
feel like pulse at all.
It's
Sorry.
all kind of steady. Yeah,
Yeah, dull,
thanks.
kind of steady, but there's still like a definite this, but yeah, it's yeah, not a sharp differential.
Not a sharp differential, but still like a little bit like
Yeah,
coming and going, or it's hard to say.
yeah, I think so.
Still, okay. Um, is that different from the skin kind of tightness thing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, it
okay,
is. The two are definitely related, but it's definitely two different things that I can feel for sure. The throb feels more like below the surface. Like doesn't
mhm,
feel muscular or anything, but it certainly feels more within. Whereas the
mm,
tautness that I'm talking about feels far more surface level and very much like just related to my skin. I should be sending these descriptions to my dermatologist.
maybe. Um, is one or the other stronger?
I think the tautness of the skin, but again,
Okay,
a little bit hard to separate the two.
so maybe the tallness part to say. Is there any other thing about the hand sensation besides these two things?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So before
Uh,
we move on, can I ask a couple of questions? So I asked a little bit about what the skin sensation was the same in both hands, and you said yes.
Hmm.
Now I want to know about the same thing about the throb. Same in both hands?
Yeah, there was no difference between the hands as far as I can recall in
Okay.
terms of the experience.
And I understood you to say at the outset that you were on your phone. Is that
Mm,
right?
I need to double check. I remember that I was walking. Yeah, my phone was in my hands. Um, yeah, that's right. I've just reread that. Yeah, because I could remember I was walking. I was mid-walk through the kitchen in my house, and my phone was in my hands, and my eyes were pointed down at my phone, but I could not tell you what was on my phone, and I didn't write it down at the time. So it's a fact of the matter, but the experience was that I could feel my hands.
So I wasn't actually interested in that part of the experience yet, or maybe at all. But the part that I was interested in is your phone in both hands, and and
I think it was like this. So yeah,
so pretty equally in both hands.
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like this.
All right. That's what I wanted to know.
I'm a bit hesitant about this question, but is the position of your hands on the phone, does that relate to the sensation at all?
I think it's what I was going to say is I think that it's relevant because I can feel the weight of my phone on my hands. Like, my phone is touching my hands, and therefore I'm more aware of my hands. But yeah, like I was going to say, I guess compared to if I didn't have my phone there and my hands were just here. But honestly, I think that, no, that's not relevant.
Okay. Yeah.
That was not a helpful answer. I apologize.
Yeah. And you're moaning, you're mid-moan. Are
Yes.
you experiencing moaning? Like, is that in your experience at this moment, or is it just something that's happening? You're moaning, but your attention is really, or what's more present is this feeling in your hands.
No, I think it is part of my experience because it wasn't, although I was moaning in response to the pain I was feeling in my hands, it didn't just feel like a autopilot, when I use that description, like it didn't just feel like just a response. It felt like something that I actively decided to do and then was thinking about sort of doing. So like I was like mid-moan because I guess in my consciousness at the time I was thinking like, oh, I'm in pain and this is frustrating sort of thing. Not that language or anything, but like that was the sensation that was happening while I was moaning. So the moan was definitely in my awareness.
Okay.
It was like a deliberate act.
Can you describe how it was in your awareness, experience, consciousness, whatever?
Well, just in the way that I said, really, I think that the pain was to a level that was so negative and so frustrating that I moaned and sort of, without too much forethought, like deliberately decided to moan.
Was there this pain in your hands and then a separate kind of awareness of the pain, or was there nothing separate to the pain itself?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Like, you said there wasn't a thought in those exact words, but was there the pain and then a separate kind of process or thought, like, oh, I'm in pain, or no?
I think yes. Like I think this was a bit meta, that I was experiencing the pain and then aware of me experiencing the pain, and then that led to me moaning. Like, so yes, I think as opposed to certain times where I, see, do, or like feel and like just what, that's not a helpful response, but whatever. I think this time I was aware of the pain I was experiencing, and not in any, like not in any defined language within my head, but I was at some meta level aware of it and then responded accordingly.
Okay. And was it like you were aware and then you moan, and right before the beep, it's more just the moaning? Or is it still also this kind of being aware of it?
As the beep went off, I was mid-moan. So the moments before the beep were probably right in that bit where I was like a very interesting space where I was caught very quickly, caught in the moment of responding to the pain I was feeling and about to moan. That's the exact moment before the beep.
Okay. Were you about to moan, or were you mid-moan, or kind of mid about to moan?
I was moaning when the beep went off, so the moment before the beep would have been just before I started moaning, yeah.
Okay. Was anything about like the moan, like vocally producing a moan or hearing the moan, was that in your experience at all?
Yeah, I think so.
More one or the other, or hard to say, or you don't know?
I don't think so much vocally producing them. I don't know. The reason I'm hesitating is because that happens so instantaneously that it's really hard to say.
Okay. Between the pain in your hands and fingers and kind of other stuff that could have been there, like the moaning or the kind of aware that you're of this pain. Could you say which was more present, or how much?
The pain itself is definitely the overwhelming experience. I find it challenging to put percentages on this one because, again, it feels all like quite linked, but I would say maybe like 60 to 70% was the pain, and then the next lot of percent, I'm gonna get really bad at maths, but like the next chunk is me then thinking about, oh, I'm in pain and this is frustrating, and then the last bit is me moaning. So I would say like maybe 60% is the actual pain, and then 25% is me thinking about the pain very quickly though. Like that's not I'm not stewing on that. That's a fast thing that happens, but there is some awareness of me being conscious of me experiencing the pain. And then the other part is the moan produced as a result of that, I think.
Okay. I'm still not 100% on the timeline.
Yeah.
So if like, I don't know, is this the reverse? This is to the right for you, right?
No.
Right, left? Oh, no.
Anyway, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Well, if I guess you could just gesture what makes sense to you. But if there's the beep at one point, and then there's this pain, and then kind of like an awareness of the pain, and then the moan, like does the awareness of the pain come right before the moan and still continue right until the beep, or how do you describe kind of a timeline of things?
Yeah, let me think about that. It feels like there is hang on. I know this is sort of doesn't make sense, but I'm equally split between wanting to say there is clear chronology of experiencing pain, like being aware of that and then moaning, but then the other part of me wants to say, no, it's too hard to split all of that. And actually, if I think about when the beep went off, that all just sort of, the moment before the beep, all those things felt like they happened at once. So, like, I'm not actually I'm finding it difficult to actually pick one of those over the other, even though, like, they're two really different things.
Okay. So it's hard for you to choose between it being some kind of sequence of, pain, thought, moan, or whatever, and it just happening all at once.
Because it sort of, in some strange way, feels like both are true. That there is a sequential thing of, like, the feeling, the throbbing, that, and then the moan, but then at the same time, it's all happening at once. So I don't know, and perhaps, sometimes when I say that it just happens so instantaneously that I find it hard to then break it down to that level. I don't know whether there's some truth in that for me, the experience of that is so fast that I can't break it down into a sequence, or, like whether that's the bit that's confusing me, that the sequence happens so quickly that I find it hard, or whether there's no sequence at all. I don't know.
And this pain and this kind of...
So before we leave that sequence, because I thought that was a good line of questioning, and I wasn't quite sure about that we got to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if this is time going that way,
mm-hmm.
and this is the beep,
mm-hmm.
so the beep starts here. So first off, is it your experience that the beep has a fast rise time like this, that there's no beep and then suddenly there's a beep?
Yeah.
As opposed to a sort of a gradual rise?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then assuming that the moment that we're interested in is this moment right there, 1 microsecond just before the beep occurs. That's
mm-hmm.
what we call caught in flight by the beep, or the last undisturbed moment just before the beep, or something
mm-hmm.
like that. What's our best guess about what's going on right then? And what that means is not really caring about what's happening over here, and not really caring about what's happening over here, but what's here. And that doesn't mean that what's here has to be instantaneous. This could have started over here and lasted up until here, but still caught in flight. Okay. And something else could have started clear back over here and kept on going, and both of those are caught in flight. Mm-hmm. Or something could have started back over here and ended, and then something else began and that got caught in flight.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Well, then if I think more about not getting so caught up on the exact moment before the beep and allowing some, like, flexibility with how I describe that, then I would say that there is a sequence, that the pain I was experiencing the throbbing, then I was aware of me experiencing the throbbing, and then I sort of very quickly, without any language or, like, whatever about it, then, like, decided to sort of moan in response. And then I'm moaning and then the beep goes off. That all happens before the beep, for sure. Yeah. So yeah. I feel more comfortable with that description if I'm allowing more time.
So is it the case that what's occurring caught in flight by the beep, as if the beep were some random dart that gets thrown into your experience,
mm-hmm.
is what's going on here basically 2 or 3 things, depending on how you count. There is hand surface skinny stuff,
mm-hmm.
and hand deep throbby stuff,
mm-hmm.
and moan. And all those 3 things are going on caught in flight by the beep.
Yeah, and I would also add to that sense, that feeling of, like, frustration or whatever that made me moan as well in response to that feeling is also present.
Okay, so those 4 things.
Yeah.
And this kind of frustrated, kind of aware of the pain, frustrated of the pain, is that something separate than the pain itself?
Yep. And that's the sort of bit that I feel is a bit meta, because it's actually me being aware of something that I'm feeling, which, I know that is definitely what was happening, because I know what the opposite feels like in, in previous beeps where we've had where something's happening but that's just happening. This was a distinct part of my awareness, was being aware of that pain I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm. And it's a kind of, there are no words to it. You've said that before, like no clear words to it. But it is a kind of aware of the pain and also frustrated, or like how would you describe that?
Yeah, there was definitely an undertone of frustration, because I've had these annoying issues with my skin for a couple of months now and no one seems to know what's going on. But it was painful and it was negative, and that was annoying me. Like, it was hurting me and there was discomfort, but there was also an undertone of like frustration at the discomfort. Yeah.
And does this meta thought, feeling, awareness, whatever you want to call it, does that have a bodily location that's at all, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm hesitant about this question, but I'll ask anyways before leaving this. Would you call it more of to use it more of a thought or a feeling, or?
Which bit? The frustration?
Yeah, the kind of awareness of the pain part and whatever comes with that.
Is it more a thought or a feeling? A feeling, I think.
Okay. I guess labeling it doesn't matter so much. And you also said, I think, so I mean, I guess to you it's not so important how you label it, but
yeah, right. It doesn't feel that I don't think there's a giant differential between like a thought and a feeling for me, so I feel like they're quite intrinsically linked, but that's a whole different scenario.
Okay. So what I have here is that most present right before the beep is this feeling in your hands, this sensation, and there's this skinny, tight feeling. And then there's this kind of throbbing. Throbbing is this kind of dull. It's not quite on the surface, and it's maybe a little bit coming and going. And then there's also you're moaning, and also you're kind of aware of that you're in pain, or you're kind of you're frustrated, kind of aware of this pain. That's what I have. At first I was a bit skeptical about this kind of meta awareness part, because I brought it up first, but I think now that talking about it, that it is part of the experience. So so what do you think about this one, Russ?
So I agree with all that. I'm still a little bit skeptical about the meta stuff, because I don't think we were clear enough from the get-go about what's caught in flight in the beep means. And you could say, well, this is 11th day. By now, Mel should know what caught in flight mean by the beep means. But I think that concept needs considerable refreshment as we go along, because what caught in flight meant on day 1 was probably different from what it meant on day 4, which was probably different from what it meant on day 7 as we get better at that.
Yep.
Right.
And I would say I'm a little conservative about trying to advance things. I think it's probably better in the long run to treat this as a iterative training for some future where we're going to be more careful, more knowledgeable, more skillful at differentiating between this and that, this time and that time, and not try to retroactively superimpose that back on this beep.
So on that note, I feel like I've been trying to get like really not concise, but like particular about like the exact moment before the beep. And like, fair enough, I guess we haven't ever described what moment before the beep means in terms of how long or whatever. But like, to me, it was always like the very short, exact moment before the beep. But you're saying like it can be, I mean, you're going to probably say it's however I choose to interpret it or something, but like it could be quite a lengthy period of time that I choose to describe. Is that what you're telling me?
So yes and no, probably, or no and yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only, from my point of view, there's only one time period, one moment that I think is pretty clearly definable. And I call that the moment of the beep. And I call that the moment before the beep. And I call it 1 microsecond before the beep. And I call that 1 millisecond before the beep. And I call it the last undisturbed moment before the beep. All of those things to me are synonymous. Mm-hmm. And they mean this moment exactly right there and no other moment. Mm-hmm. The 1 microsecond, the last possible time just before you recognize the ongoingness of the beep. Mm. Every other time is, I think, sort of loose. And you can't do anything better than that. So I would like us to distinguish between what is ongoing at this particular moment and everything else. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's sometimes interesting to be able to say, I'm quite confident that I had some kind of an experience out here which had stopped before I got to here. Mm-hmm. And I have some other kind of experience that started quite a while before this and was still ongoing when I got to here. Those things I think are discriminable, even though we can't really put a time. This is 1 second and this is 2 seconds or whatever. That I don't think we can do that. So from my point of view, I would like us to clearly distinguish between what is ongoing at the moment of what I call the moment of the beep, which is right there, and it's not here, and it's not here, but it's ongoing. And then as long as we're clear about that, I'm happy to have us talk about other kinds of stuff. Yeah. As long as we know the difference between that other kind of stuff and stuff that's caught in flight by the moment of the beep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think that's exactly the principle that I've been working on. It's when we start to go like sequentially, like, did this happen, whatever, then that's where I'm like, well, then you're asking me to feed into this because at that exact time, like that's all that's happening and I don't know, like whatever. So that's sort of what I'm referring to of if we then try and unpack, say, if there's 3 things that I've sort of identified that are happening at the time of the beep, like that's instantaneous at that point, but did the throbbing feel experienced before the meta, before the whatever? Well then, yeah, if I unpack going like that, probably. So that's in line with what you're saying?
Yes. And I would say that we have a right to have less and less confidence the farther we get away from caught in flight by the moment of the beep.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult for us to so if we get into sequence, this happened and then this happened and then this happened. Yeah. It's very difficult to figure out whether that's microseconds apart or millennia apart.
Yeah.
And We can try and send, and sometimes, so if at the moment of the beep, you could say, look, what my experience at the moment of the beep was an ongoing sequence. There was A and B and C and D, and I felt this ongoing sequence going on at the moment of the beep. I would find that of interest, even if you can say, this happened so fast, I couldn't tell you whether it was A or B or C or D. But I can be quite confident about saying that I was somewhere in that sequence and it happened, but something like that. That would be all right with me, as long as we are carefully distinguishing as best we can between what is caught in flight and what's not.
Yeah.
The hard part, the part that makes life difficult, I guess, is that before the beep doesn't have any precise meaning. The dinosaurs were extinct before the beep, and Trump was elected before the beep, and the sun came up this morning before the beep, and I dropped my pencil before the beep. All those things share the same language, and so they're confusing unless you really work at trying to figure it out. But there is one moment that does not have that inherent ambiguity in it, and that's what I call the moment of the beep, or the last undisturbed moment before the beep, or the
well, before the beep. And that just remains the challenge yes, it's very easy for me at the time to identify oh shoot, the beep's just gone off. What was happening right before that? That is still hard.
Well, I'm happy that it's still hard, in the sense that I don't want us to just gloss over it and say, well, it seems like it ought to be easy. I'll just tell them it's easy.
Yeah.
I think our task is to do the best we can, which includes being honest about where the difficulties are, and how confident that that we're overcoming those difficulties or not.
Yeah, it's a very weird skill to try and maneuver. I'm getting a bit obsessed with trying to do it, but it is a very challenging skill to do, because by nature of being so just living your life, and then being, the beep goes off, it still remains a challenge to work out what was happening there when you were just consumed in your life.
So how confident are you about this particular beep, that you felt a skinny tightness in the webby of your fingers, and that was ongoing, that if there were an alternate universe that had no beep in it, but was time locked with this universe, so at the moment that this beep occurred in this universe, in this alternate universe, would you be feeling the tightness in your hand?
100%.
How confident?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the other side of the coin from what you were just saying. You're saying was all very difficult, but now you're saying it's 100% easy. And so the question is, we have to differentiate between what we can do and then what we can't do. And what we can do is some things, and then the other things get to be difficult. But the object is to know the difference.
Yeah. That's helpful. I feel like when we re-go over things like this, it's just helpful in that being more confident in, I don't know, sometimes it can feel like you start to drown in ambiguity of it all again. So it's kind of helpful just to go through things, and even though everything you've said is in line with what I've been doing, or everything we said from the start or whatever, it can just be sort of reassuring, I suppose.
I think it is. I agree that it's reassuring, but I also think that it's required. And I said a little bit ago, it's the 11th day, you should have learned it by now. But I don't. To my core, I don't believe that's true. I think we have to recalibrate that. We have to refine that. And that, I think, is one of the fundamental things that makes DES different from anything else, because most psychological science or whatever gives you some instruction at the beginning and says, in capital letters in the instructions, pay attention only to the moment of the beep, as if people knew what the fuck that meant, which they don't. And even if they did, it would change to some degree, or it would require. It's sort of like sharpening a knife. You have to sharpen a knife every now and then. And it was sharp. It was sharp all the way along, but you have to sharpen it, and because that's the way life is, or the way things are, or whatever. So shall we go on to number 2?
Yes. Sorry, we spent a long time on that first one.
So I don't have any. There's no room for apology for. And I think we have to do it. I think it is the nature of the beast.
Well, it's also a little more satisfying than just giving you nothing every third beep. So that's interesting. Okay. The second beep went off at 5:53 p.m. and I've written, I was mid saying Coco out loud, which is the name of my dog. As I walked towards my dog, beyond that, nothing stood out. I was walking, I saw my dog, I spoke to the dog. That's about it.
So all of those things could be behavioral descriptions with no experience at all.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them could have some, or all of them could have some experiential attributes.
Mm-hmm. I was aware of the fact that there was seeing my dog was definitely in my awareness, and then calling out to my dog was in my awareness. Not in a meta sense, but just like, I was definitely consumed by that. By physically calling out to her or audibly. And then, but I would say beyond that, like not a whole lot was super present in my awareness. Like, I was in the act of walking or whatever, but I wasn't particularly aware of like my limbs or the temperature or anything like that. It was really the only sort of thing in my awareness was seeing my dog and calling out to my dog.
And was there any particular aspect of the dog that you're seeing, or?
How do you mean?
Well, noticing the black spots or the panting or the whatever.
No, nothing specific like that. I would say dog as whole.
Okay, so I'm seeing the dog, and I'm saying Coco.
Yep.
And is it Coco with COCO or COCOA?
No, COCO.
Okay. And is there anything in my experience about that other than that I'm doing it?
I guess that there is, because what I was thinking about then is like, it's like a greeting sort of thing. Like I'm not just yelling that with no attachment to it, I suppose. Like I just walked in the door and I'm saying I'm greeting my dog and sort of I feel like these descriptions are getting slippery now.
So let me ask you, is this utterance a one-word deal, Coco, or is it that the beep catches me at Coco and I have said hi, Coco, or hello, Coco? Or...
No, this was a one-word utterance. Yeah, it was just Coco. And I was just thinking in my head then whether like there was any precursor in my brain before that Coco came out loud of things like that. But no, it was more instantaneous than that. It was just like, see dog, say Coco.
Okay. So this, I think, is what we have called autopilot. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. That's sort of, I think, what my descriptions were getting at, of just like walking, saw dog, spoke to dog.
Okay. Without any particular
forethought or anything.
Right. Okay. Then I think I'm good.
I'm good as well. Yeah. Number 3.
Yep. So this went off at 6:58, and I've written. I've written. Yeah, I don't really remember. I was mid-conversation with my sister, her friend, and my dad, and I was listening and talking. So I feel like I don't like this description, because I feel like there's actually sort of so much going on that once the beep went off and I was sort of overstimulated, that then like when I had to write down what was happening in the moment before the beep, I was really like struggled to be able to articulate that beyond like, well, I was in a conversation, do you know?
Was it that the beep went off and you weren't confident about your ability to tell what was going on? Or
yeah.
It was that you weren't able to articulate what was going on? Like, was it more like, oh, I don't know? Or more like, oh, I don't know how to describe this?
No, I think it was, I don't know. I don't think it was, I don't know how to describe this. I think it was, I don't know. Because there's so much happening that I think this sort of in a way goes back to what I was saying earlier, that sometimes it's very challenging when you're really consumed in life to then the beep goes off and it's like, oh, what was happening? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea, because I don't know.
So can I ask, are the words "I don't know" what you wrote down? Are they in? You write down?
I wrote, don't really remember.
Okay.
This is I'll read you exactly what I wrote. Don't really remember. Was mid-conversation with my sister, her friend, and dad. Listening, talking, not much beyond. That's exactly what I wrote.
Thanks.
Sounds to me like we should take that seriously, that you wrote you don't remember. So to move to the next one.
Yeah.
What would you say?
So before we do that, can I ask a couple of questions about this?
Yeah.
So I forget exactly what you said in your description, but it seems to me that there's sort of two possibilities of I don't remember. One of them, which was the one that I think you talked about, was there's so many things going on, I just couldn't coalesce anything to say this is what it was. But another thing about I don't remember is that there's just nothing going on, and I don't remember. And
I'm not sure which of those is true. So I think a big part of it is that there's so much external stimulus that I get a bit overwhelmed by then trying to work out what was happening in my inner experience. So I think that's definitely true, of that muddies the water for me trying to work out what was happening just internally. But then also like maybe not a lot internally, because I was so absorbed in all of that there's nothing obvious like the pain in my hands to grab at. So I think like a mix of all of that is true.
So about what I think of as inner experience does not necessarily have to be inner. Mm-hmm. So if I'm hearing a conversation, I would call that inner experience. If the conversation is what's present to me, I would still call that inner experience, even though it's out there.
Yeah.
And the reason that I call that inner experience is that your bag of bones, whatever, is choosing to be paying attention to that conversation as opposed to the pain in your hands or the temperature in the room or the feeling on your backside, or what any of the welter of other kinds of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't differentiate between inner and outer in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, or a question is, does it seem at this particular moment that you are absorbed in the conversation, or does it seem like there's just nothing? I am not absorbed in the conversation. Those guys are chattering away and I don't give a shit about it. Those would seem to be sort of two different kinds of things.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I think definitely absorbed in the conversation then, for sure. And I think that that's probably true of times when I feel like this, and maybe what I've been trying to describe is, yeah, those times when I feel a bit frazzled or like, oh, I don't remember. It's because I'm absorbed in the thing that I am doing and there's nothing more beyond that. But sometimes to me that feels like too much of of a description of the thing, the activity or the action or the behavioral thing or whatever that I'm doing. But if that is the case, then generally, it's because I'm just completely absorbed in that, and that's entirely where my focus is, and there's nothing meta about it, and there's nothing whatever, but that's definitely the focus of my inner experience of like, I was absorbed in that conversation, and that's all there is to that. It's not that conversation was happening around me, but I was off with the fairies or anything. Like, no, quite the opposite.
Okay.
But I find that a bit challenging sometimes, maybe, to describe.
And challenging to describe maybe because of the difficulty of the terminology of inner experience, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I think that has been gnawing away at me a little bit in the last, especially getting back into it in the last 2 weeks. That inner experience as we've gone on sorry to go on another tangent, but as we've gone on, I've been better, I think, at trying to expand my understanding or whatever of that term, in terms of initially when we started, I would view inner experience as what I thought was happening inside my head, and I'd be talking about like inner monologue or lack thereof. And then that's expanded to like feelings or physical sensations, or then exactly like a focused attention is probably a description that I like, and sort of what you were saying there of like, well, I was entirely absorbed in a conversation. That is very different to how I interpreted inner experience on day one, I would say. It's an expanded definition.
So this is another one of the knife sharpening conversations, I guess, that we're having here, which is a necessary and important thing to have. So I would be happy to call it, I would actually prefer to call it experience rather than inner experience, because of the problems that we're talking about here. But the problem with experience is, experience refers to, my experience of spending a sabbatical leave in Maastricht or whatever. That's not experience, what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
But so you can't just call it experience and assume that people know what you're talking about either.
Mm-hmm.
You could call it before the footlights of consciousness experience, which is sort of better and than either one of those two in a way. But A, it's awkward, and B, it presumes that you know what consciousness is. So I don't think there is a term for it. And yet, I do think that we can learn to understand what we mean by it, even if we don't have a good word for it.
Mm.
And right now, the closer one seems like whatever it is that's before the footlights of your consciousness counts as what I call inner experience. And what I'm gathering here is that before the footlights of my consciousness is this conversation. I haven't shined this conversation off. Or shined it on, whatever that expression is. I haven't withdrawn from the conversation.
Mm.
I don't mean it in a meta way that I'm analyzing the conversation, and I don't even mean it in I know that it's my sister that's talking rather than my father at this particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I am absorbed in the conversation, but there's nothing beyond that.
Yeah. I do think another way that I've tried to think about it lately, which might sound silly to you, but I've found it a little bit helpful, is just that thing of, well, you're not me, so like you just see my blob of body and have no idea beyond my blob of body being here what the blob of body is experiencing. So in super layman's terms, like, if I look at my sister sitting over there, I got no idea what's going on apart from the fact that her blob of body is sitting there. So just that sort of concept has been helpful for me to take it out of my head and broaden that like inner experience sort of thing of, yeah, okay, well, you guys can only see my blob of body, but what was happening inside my blob of body at that time?
So I think that's exactly right. Because inside your blob of body, you could have been looking at your sister's hair and saying, I like what you did with her hair, or I don't like what you did with her hair, or whatever. But noticing the color of it or whatever. And that would be true of absolutely every other feature on her body, and that all that's visual. Mm. And you could have been somehow attending to the sound of her voice or his voice or the airplane flying overhead or whatever.
Yeah.
Or all of those things that which I call the welter, all of those things doesn't matter to me at this particular moment. I'm absorbed in the conversation, tracking along in the conversation. Nothing else is ongoing. But that doesn't mean that nothing is ongoing. It means that nothing else is going on other than
I have a different take on this beep. Which is just the possibility of it also being nothing. Because I would take seriously that you didn't remember, you wrote, I don't remember. Or that even it could be, it could be both. You're absorbed, but also absorbed kind of nothingness. Yes, I mean, I wouldn't pin down this beep. To me, it's similar in some ways to the sampling day you were watching Saltburn, and a lot of the beeps you were absorbed in the movie, and then one of them you're just like, I don't remember this one, and we speculated that maybe you were so absorbed in the movie that you can remember, or so absorbed that that experience, maybe it was nothing, maybe it just, like, we don't know about the subconscious or whatever, but maybe experience moved to the subconscious or something, or we don't know. And for that one, we didn't really probe further. So I would also take seriously the possibility here that you don't know, or none of us know.
So it could be that you've misunderstood this conversation, Julian, because I haven't, for the last 10 minutes, haven't been trying to figure out what's going on in this beep at all. This conversation, from my point of view, is about next week, not about yesterday's beep.
But I feel like there are times when we pin down to an absorbed kind of experience where it was a little pinned down. And if it's training for next week, I'd rather have it like not pinned down, like as open as it could have been this or that or nothing or all of it, or, I'd rather not pin it down.
So I don't think I pinned it down. B, I think the object is to clarify the distinctions. And it's not good enough to just say, well, it could be this, could be that. It is, I think we have to define exactly what we mean by this and exactly what we mean by that, so that next time we might be better.
Well, Mel, how did your impression of kind of your experience the moment before the speech, how did it kind of change over, like, while we were talking about it, or if it changed at all?
No, I thought I personally took it to be like that. I took the conversation into speaking more generally and broadly, especially when I was starting to talk about like me being a blob, that's when I sort of had stopped talking about this beep in particular and was just trying to explain in general how I am approaching DES at the moment and trying to articulate samples and stuff like that. I was talking broadly then, and I find it helpful to do that, and I have done that a bit today, so I apologize, but of getting reassurance that I'm on the right path. And so when I'm talking about, well, hang on, my definition, if you like, of inner experience has expanded and evolved over the weeks, and sort of sharing that, I find that then helpful to make sure that that is aligned with yours, and therefore, because then it makes me feel like, okay, well, then when I describe this next week or whatever, it's in line with your understanding of the same thing. So yeah, I'd taken this more broadly now and just want to make sure, that there's like clarity, or that we're all on the same, just reduce ambiguity as much as possible with this.
All right. Okay.
Well, it's 12 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, sorry, Julian.
Makes it late for Julian, early for... Should we call it a day or do one more?
I don't mind. My energy level is fine, so it's up to you two.
I'm fine, but I'm aware that it's late for you, Julian, so it's absolutely your call.
Then I say we do another.
Number 4.
Okay. This went off 2 minutes after the beep prior, so it's 7 p.m. and I have written these exact words. I was mid-typing the above. I was sort of paused thinking about what I wanted to write. I could hear conversation around me, but not the actual words. I was very focused on trying to think about the previous beep experience.
So I'm going to leave this up to you. Sometimes it's just too confusing to have a beep that's about another beep. The first beep itself was confusing enough to overlay it. And so if you think this is more confusing than it's worth, let's go on to the next beep.
Yes, it feels very like Inception.
All right. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay, fabulous, because things have changed here. So this one went off at 7:50 p.m. and I have written, I was mid-editing on my laptop. I was watching and listening to vision of my grandpa talking. I was really taking it in. Nothing else is in my awareness as I focus on this intently in order to craft the story that I'm telling.
So is it your grandpa that you're editing?
Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me again what's in your experience, because I'm sort of confused about that. I had those as two separate deals.
I was looking at my laptop, which was playing vision of my grandpa talking, and that I was completely absorbed in that. So that is what was in my experience of watching and listening to him as I was, for wider context, I was in the editing process, so listening for bits that I wanted to use or whatever. But so in the exact moment before the beep, I was just watching and listening to him on my laptop.
And so at the moment of the beep, would you say my experience is absorbing or receiving what's on the screen? Or does it seem like I'm looking for a place to quit or a place to stop so that I'm in the editing mode?
No, I'd say the first one. Yeah, very much absorbed in what is being played out. I wasn't looking for a pause yet. It's like I know exactly what it felt like in terms of it was like really deep listening, because I was sort of almost looking for meaning in what he was saying. So rather than like looking for a place to get out, it was like really listening to what he was saying, in the hope that something hit and made me feel something.
And does the realiness of the listening, is that part of your experience, or is your experience of what's before the footless of my consciousness is my grandpa speaking and what he's saying and whatever, with or without a meta, I'm deeply doing this?
No meta level. There was no meta thing, but there was, when I say really, I think I mean to the extent of which I am absorbed in this. So it's like an intensity of watching and listening. Like there is no chance that anything else is part of my awareness because I'm so locked into watching and listening to this.
Okay.
The really focused attention, I guess.
And is that attention different from the one from a couple of weeks ago where there was a conversation going on?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's relevant in that this feels like way easier to describe because I'm like, oh, there's no doubt in my mind that this is exactly what I was focused on. And in the other one, it's like, oh yeah, I was in the conversation, but was I like listening to Dad or I don't know, it's just in the conversation. This is much easier to be more, it was more tunnel vision or something.
Okay.
The lights moving.
Then I think I'm good.
You were watching and listening? Was this anything specific about what he was saying or doing, or no?
I didn't write that down. I don't feel like I was like hung up on any particular word or whatever. I was just like locked in like the, I don't know, active receiving. Yeah.
Was it more on the watching, more on the listening? Impossible to separate, hard to say?
Yeah, I would say it just felt equal.
Okay. I'm good on this too.
Me too. So when are we going to do this again? I guess I should say, are we going to do this again? And then if so, when?
Well, absolutely. From my end, don't want to make all that progress clarifying things today to not do it again.
That's right. I'm with you. I was not trying to talk us out of it by any means, but the method is free people coming together to do what they want to do, without a sense of obligation.
So same time next week works for me, if that works for everyone.
Fine for me.
That would be Monday the 26th at 1 o'clock.
10 p.m. for me, 8 for you, Mel.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Is that still fine for you, Julian? I'm very conscious of it being late.
No, yeah, it's fine.
Fine.
It's good.
All right. Sounds good to me.
All right. Let's just stay on a couple minutes, couple seconds after I pause the recording.